We are back and ready to roll for episode number 35 of the Shutdown Inning Podcast. I am Steven Rissotto, joined as always by my partner in crime and co-host Tylor Hall. Tylor, what's going on? First episode of the offseason.
Hey, everybody. Yes, we are officially in the hot stove season. It was a fun end to the playoffs. I feel like we had some quality baseball, and now we get to see what next year's going to look like over the next few weeks.
Yeah, it's the hot stove season when you have like a parade at the end of the week, and then the next week, like there's rumors already. And there's been rumors kind of swirling, and we'll get into them, I guess, a little bit throughout the winter. But we could start with the postseason. I mean, we saw the first World Series in the history of the Texas Rangers. What was it, like over 60 years they had to wait? And the Giants like kind of ruined that 13 years ago, and then 13 years ago to the day, with Bruce Bochy at the helm, the Rangers bring it home.
Yeah, it's kind of some interesting parallels there between Bochy's first World Series with each team. He ended a 52-year drought for each team, 52 years in Texas, 52 years in San Francisco on November 1st, on the road in Game 5. So pretty crazy how some of these parallels seem to happen in baseball. But, it's always, like we talked about, it's always fun to see a fan base win their first World Series. And Rangers can now say that they have a World Series championship.
I feel like that's such a cool thing when like you're the last team on the field celebrating. Like all 30 team or all 29 other teams, or I guess 28 particularly, are at homes watching. Or they're at home watching, and the other team is losing, and you're the last team standing after a long year, which includes long spring training, a 6-month marathon, and you finally get there. And the Rangers, like, they had their fair share of difficulties, right? Like, I
Yeah.
think we've covered on this show, like DeGrom getting hurt, and they were without Scherzer, and he tried to come back, it didn't work. But like in my mind, I feel like I have a new respect for Corey Seager. Like he's kind of climbed the rankings of guys that I want to watch. Just the way he plays the game, and his production is insane. And I feel like I didn't appreciate it until now.
Yeah. For our Bay Area listeners,
Yeah.
Bruce Bochy was recently on KMBR with Murph and Mack, and he kind of compared Corey Seager to Buster Posey as far as he's kind of like a quiet guy who you might not fully appreciate until you get to see him more regularly play. And I mean, he came up big in the World Series. I mean, I think we might be having a very different conversation about who won this World Series if he doesn't hit that home run in Game 1. They were about to fall down 1-0 at home, and he hit a mammoth home run to tie it up. Garcia then hit the walk off that everyone. It's kind of like the Michael Morse to Travis Ishikawa, But if he doesn't hit that home run, they go down 0-1. Who knows how the rest of the series goes? And then he just, he put the team on his back, and he's just kind of a quiet guy, and he's a stud.
Just really incredible. And I feel like he was just like on a Dodger team with a lot of really good players, so we kind of like looked at him as a good player but not the guy, and he went to Texas and now has to be the guy. And him and Simeon are just so good up the middle, and it's a good group. And in that home run, he hit the home run and he showed more emotion than we've ever seen from Corey Seager. So like that's what the bigger spots in baseball could do to even the guys that don't react like that usually. It could bring it out of them. So I thought that was really funny. And Garcia's insanely good. Like
I felt bad that Garcia ended up getting hurt and put it on the shelf. But yeah, I mean, just to touch base really quick on that emotion that Seager showed, there was a really cool picture. I don't know if you saw it, where it was basically in the backswing of that home run. He hasn't even let go of the bat yet, and he's like screaming already. He's just like so pumped up. And it was really cool to kind of see that. Kind of shows you the magnitude of the moment, because like we said, he's kind of a quiet guy, quiet leader, and he showed that emotion, and I think that really fired up his clubhouse.
Yeah, just for like the city overall, and I guess not really city because the Rangers have a decent market, but just that area overall, the area the Rangers play in bringing home a championship for the first time. And you probably remember more than me because I was a third grader. Sorry, you're gonna hate me. But bringing home like a championship for the first time, I mean, it means something to those generations of Rangers fans that didn't watch good teams and watched heartbreak, especially in 2011. And it seems like, that parade, which had about like 700, 800,000 people there, which is a very good crowd for a Friday afternoon. It means something to a city for like the first time.
Yeah, I mean, you don't always see it because there's not always long droughts like this, but I saw a couple back when the Giants won. I saw a couple this time around where people are taking like videos of like their grandpa who has been like a Rangers fan for over 50 years, and he finally sees the Rangers win, and he just like starts bawling his eyes out on the couch. It's really cool to see. It kind of always gives me flashbacks to remembering, the first time my team won. So it's always cool to see, and you know, got to enjoy it while you can, because you never know when you'll see the next one. It could be another 52 years. You hope not, but you got to enjoy it in the moment. And I feel like Texas did a good job of doing that.
Yeah, and there's certain fan bases like you hear a lot about, like grew up a Yankees fan, grew up a Red Sox fan, grew up a Cubs fan, Giants fan, Dodger fan, especially Braves fan because of they were on TV all the time. But it's good to highlight, and we'll get into this I'm sure in a little bit. It's good to highlight some of those teams where like we don't really know the fan base, even though they've been around a little bit. So congrats to the Rangers, and congrats to Bruce Bochy cementing his fourth World Series ring. He's been to the World Series five times in his managerial career, and he's 4 for 5. That's a pretty good percentage.
Yeah, that's pretty solid. I mean, so this list of where Bochy is now in the echelon of managers: Joe McCarthy, Casey Stengel, Connie Mack, the only 3 managers with more than him. He's tied with Walter Alston and Joe Torre now. So you're looking at 4 Yankees dynasties and a guy that managed for over 50 years, and then Bruce Bochy. That's pretty wild to think of.
That is insane. And for some reason, I thought Joe Torre had more than 4, just because it seemed like the Yankees won the entire 90s. But he just had that really good stretch of like the dynasty, like you were saying, where the Yankees were just the dominant team. But he's like, I thought Alex Pavlovich had a really good tweet. He was a lock for the Hall of Fame if he stayed retired, 100% a lock.
Yeah.
But coming out of retirement, bringing a new city to the World Series, he is putting himself in the conversation of like all-time great, and I think he's there, right? And like so much is said about like Bobby Cox and everything, and La Russa's amazing, and Torre's amazing, and Bobby Cox is amazing, but Bobby Cox, like, he had 1 championship to show for it, despite all the division titles. But I mean, again, it's hard to compare and contrast with this type of thing, because
it's like, do you want to win divisions, or do you want to win World Series? Like, what's the goal? No one comes into spring training saying, hey, let's win the division this year. That's the first step of the goal. He's definitely a lock. Where I think you and me are kind of biased, but I mean, how do you knock it? I mean, and if you look at the list too, and some of the names I just mentioned, like there's not a lot of contemporary guys in there. Even Joe Torre was 25 years ago. Yep. La Russa and Sparky Anderson are just behind him, and they're on the fringe of contemporary. I mean, Sparky Anderson probably not. La Russa, his last World Series was a little over a decade ago. So, in this day and age, to have a guy that can win that consistently with all the different teams, if you look over the last 15, 20 years, there's not a lot of repeat champions. The Giants won a few, the Red Sox won a few, I think the Cardinals have a couple. There's almost a new champion every year, and so to be able to get teams there and win it and bring it home is, it's not common this day of age. And really quick too, I mean, he just led the team. So 11-0 on the road in the playoffs, I think they were. I mean, we could do a whole episode or 2 or 3 on Bruce Bochy, I think. But like you said, slam dunk Hall of Famer. The legacy that was already in stone is just like in the all-time hemisphere now of just greatness for MLB managers.
Yeah, and just to close the book on Bochy, like his career path, like Joe Torre was fired several times as a manager before he kind of had the late career resurgence with the Yankees. And the thing that kind of separates Bochy from the guys like La Russa and Torre, to a certain extent Torre, is that Bochy didn't have the guys that they had, on their team. He had to mix and match a lot in 2010, 12, 14. And, to a certain extent this year with the bullpen, I mean, they barely got into the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that any of the teams that he won a World Series with, like at the beginning of the year, you could have said they wouldn't, if they missed the playoffs, you wouldn't have been surprised.
Mm-hmm.
Where, Torrey, if he would have missed the playoffs with any of those Yankee teams, he would have been in hot water.
Yeah.
This Rangers team lost over 100 games 2 years ago. They won 72 games last year, and now they're World Series champions. And I know that's not all Bruce Bochy, but I think he's definitely a big reason for that. That improvement, and just being able to get the most out of rosters that otherwise might not even be in the postseason.
Yeah, without a doubt. And the trend of old school managers, it's interesting how that's kind of come about. And that leads us into the next point, is that there's a few managerial openings. It seems like a new one is opening every day, kind of.
Yeah.
And we talked about last episode how the Giants found their guy with Bob Melvin. Well, there's been a few developments since then, and another old school guy got hired in Orange County, with Ron Washington returning to the managerial seat. He signs a deal to lead the Los Angeles Angels into their next era of baseball. And I guess Ron Washington, I mean, he's a guy who's been around baseball for a long time, and he's one of the most respected baseball people in the game, especially the way he handles like his infielders. But really cool to see him get a chance to manage again.
Yeah, I'm glad he's getting another shot. Like you said, he seems to be, beloved across baseball. Players love to play for him. I haven't seen many players have much negativity to say about him. It's all positive. I'm just kind of surprised that a guy his age, I think he's 71, would take a role with a team like the Angels. Usually at this stage in a career, they're coming into a situation like a Bochy or like a Dusty. Like, okay, like I think I can go over become a winner. I don't see that possibility with the Angels, at least in the next few years. So it'll be really interesting to see how that goes. But obviously baseball's in his blood. He's a lifer, so glad that he has another situation to manage in.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And just to kind of recap the managerial. So the Giants hired Melvin, right? The Guardians ended up hiring Stephen Vogt. So that's another one we didn't touch on. And Cleveland has big shoes to fill with Terry Francona, and Stephen Vogt's going to have to fill them. And he's got 1 year of coaching experience with as the quality control coach with the Mariners. And outside of that, he's been kind of a managerial prospect since towards the end of his career, really. And the Giants had interviewed him. We knew that. But he's getting a chance in Cleveland, Tyler.
Yeah. I think pretty much everyone at least talked to Stephen Vogt that had an opening. And, yep. Not surprising that, he's an ex-catcher. They seem to kind of latch on and be good managers. And, replacing a guy like Francona will be tough. But, kind of starting with a guy like Vogt, Francona was around for a long time. He was the manager of the Indians for quite a while. They could be looking to, if they've caught a good candidate with Stephen Vogt, he could be the Guardians manager for a long time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I hope he's there for a while.
Yeah, and we've talked about it to an extent on the show that, that AL Central is kind of a wild card. It's a pretty weak division. There's usually it's either the Guardians or the Twins. Maybe every once in a while, the White Sox, if they can get their act together, is in the hunt. So, he has a chance where even if he has kind of not a great first year, he could still get into the postseason and make some noise happen. So I think it's a good situation for a first-time manager to kind of get your shoes, get your feet wet, so to speak.
I agree. And I hope Cleveland, they're a market where I feel like you can, and because of the reason of the kind of the weaker American League Central, and they're good at developing pitching and developing, some players in recent history, but I hope he stays there for a while, right? Like I want to see some managerial stability. Francona was there for a very long time. Like Torey Lovullo just got extended. We kind of sung his praises this postseason. He's been in Arizona through the thick and thin. They could have easily fired him years ago after a few down years, but they stuck with him. And I feel like we need managers that could just stay in one place for a while, who an organization doesn't even have to worry about that position, and who I would like to see with Stephen Vogt, and I feel like it's a good spot for that. I didn't write it in our notes, but Carlos Mendoza, the Yankees bench coach under Aaron Boone, was hired by the New York Mets to lead them. An interesting decision after firing Buck Showalter. So the Mets job is off the board, and that I think was the most intriguing one, to be honest, with kind of what they want to do payroll wise and the team that they could put on the field if they wanted to. Like it's kind of a win now situation. So for him,
Yeah, I expected more of a bigger name to go to the Mets, kind
me
of,
too.
which is kind of what you alluded to. I thought they'd go for like a slam dunk. This is a guy that is proven that we know can win. Hey, obviously he nailed the interview process, and they believe in what he can do. So yeah, I agree. I think that was the one that caught me most off guard, was that that's who they went with. Which kind of ties into our next one. I thought it was Craig Counsell, man. I thought Craig
Yeah.
Counsell was going to manage the Mets. And obviously he's going to Chicago. David Ross kind of gets the surprise firing after he seemed
Oh
to be
man.
so loved by the Cubs players, and the Cubs fan base loves him. I think what surprised me the most is when the Brewers let him talk to the Mets. I thought it was just like the Mets can talk to him. I didn't know that it meant he could talk to anybody. Do you
Mhm.
was that your understanding as well?
Well, he was on the final year of his deal, and kind of like I expected him to talk to everybody, but I also expected the Brewers to put in a bigger effort in extending him. Like he's
But it's
Milwaukee.
kind of
Like
like
he
if you
yeah,
wanted to extend him, you don't let him talk to other teams. You just extend him.
exactly. And
It's
and
kind of like the Melvin thing. Once they let him talk to the Giants, it's like, okay, well, he's not going to be the manager of the Padres next year. If you want to extend Craig Counsell, you don't let him talk to anyone else. You say, hey, Craig, what do you want? Let's make this happen and keep you in Milwaukee, because he was there for a long time. A long time
mhm.
player. I think he was there for almost 20 years, over 15 between from his playing days. He went into the front office, and then he managed for quite a while. So yeah, and to go to like their biggest rival, and just that the Cubs would make that jump because of their relationship with Ross too. It's kind of weird how so many relationships that we thought were strong were
Mhm.
just evaporated in like a moment's notice.
Yeah, and I want to get to the Ross thing in just a second, but Council, like what you said, I agree with, and that's why I'm so down on the Brewers and what the Brewers said about this, because the Brewers owner released a statement and said, "Well, Craig is walking away from." I got to find what he said exactly, because it was
We didn't lose him; he lost us, and
that's
he
what it
lost
was.
our community.
That's horrible, especially when it looks like you put no effort into retaining him or at least matching what the Cubs gave him. And we'll talk
Yeah,
about what the Cubs gave him in a little bit because I think that's fascinating. But um, you could have matched it if you wanted to keep him. He's
yeah.
been there, he's earned it. I think is he even from Milwaukee? I think he's from Milwaukee too. So this is his childhood team, I think. Um, if I'm not mistaken, South Bend, Indiana, so not from
Close
Milwaukee, but
by. That's
close
very
by.
close.
Yeah. I mean, he's a brewer. His family's from there. He talked about not wanting to leave his family, and granted, he doesn't go far, but it's not like you're gonna go home for dinner every night. But um, I don't know. And the David Ross thing, like David Ross, like the Cubs did not have a good time down the stretch. They faltered. They ended up, not making the playoffs. It was bad for them down the stretch. But David Ross, from everything I've seen when I watch Cubs games, he's made good in-game decisions. He seems to be connecting with the players. And for them to just throw him to the curb like that, it kind okay, what it kind of reminded me of is it kind of reminded me of like a video game, right? When you're playing like a video game, a sports video game, and like you try to make your team as good as possible and just a slight advantage, you're willing to part ways with like another player, right?
Yeah.
That's what it reminded me of. And it's like, this isn't a video game, it's real life. And Ross, who's a World Series hero for them, who has ties to that organization, who has ties to Jed Hoyer and everything, it's crazy to see that happen, him get kicked to the curb like that. But, and I wonder if he takes a job right away. Like San Diego's opening. I know they're interviewing Phil Nevin. Um, and, Milwaukee, if they switch there, Houston.
Basically a trade.
Yeah, Houston's still there. So, I mean, he becomes the hot topic. He becomes a hot option for me, but I'm a little shocked that that's the case.
Yeah, this was definitely, like I said, surprising. I won't say it's like jarring, because it's not like it doesn't impact me, but I was definitely surprised to just see how that whole situation went down. And I agree. I think David Ross has to be probably maybe with Phil Nevin, kind of the best candidates available now. So as long as he's not like, I need to take a break after just getting kicked to the curb unexpectedly, if he's interested in managing next year, I don't see how he's not.
Yeah, and it's really funny because when I saw the notification pop up, I'm like, oh, Council's going to the Cubs. Good for him. Then I was like, wait, what does that mean for David Ross? That was my first thought. And usually we don't think like, for managers that, of lesser profile, we don't really think anything of it. But that
Well, yeah,
one was
yeah, because usually when a manager gets hired this time of year, it's because the opening was already there. It's not like a team with a manager hires a new guy and just fires a guy on the spot. So
yeah.
I think that's why it was so surprising, because no one was thought like, oh, the Cubs have an opening. Everyone thought the Cubs had their manager. So
Yeah, no, without a doubt. We'll see what happens in San Diego, Milwaukee, and for Houston to replace Dusty. I think Joe Espada has earned that right to take over. He's been the bench coach there forever. He's interviewed with teams over the years. I would give
yeah,
him the reign.
yeah, they've had some success recently. It's not like Dusty got fired. He's retiring. He's, had an awesome run. So
He was forced out, Tyler.
yeah, he was forced out. I can't believe they forced Dusty. That's a whole nother conversation that I've avoided at all costs on Twitter. But I think, they have a good thing going. They have a good thing going. They have a familiarity there with Espada, with the players. So I think that's an easy decision there. So
Yeah, no doubt. All right, moving on. From the managerial stuff. MLB has released their award finalists, and as we know, the BBWAA votes on some of the major awards every year. And it's awards week, I think next week, and the finalists were released this week. And I guess we could start with the award that's going to be announced on the first day of this, and that is Rookie of the Year. So on the National League side, Corbin Carroll for the Diamondbacks is a finalist with I said with the Diamondbacks twice. James Outman with the Dodgers, the kid from the Bay Area, and for the Mets, Kodai Senga. So I think there's an obvious choice here.
yeah, a lot of these, there's some obvious ones. I mean, obviously all these guys that we were going to mention had great years,
Yeah.
but how do you not give it to Corbin Carroll? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he's not just a Rookie of the Year. He's one of the top players in baseball this year. So, I mean, Senga had a great year. Outman had a solid performance for the Dodgers, but I don't see how I think that's going to be almost a landslide victory for Carroll when they release all the totals.
It's got to be unanimous, I think. I mean, he's the first 2050 rookie. He played on a postseason. I know Outman played on a postseason team, but Outman, I think, was had months where he was just really cold. And Senga. Here's the thing about Senga is he's a very, very established major league pitcher, and I think it's very insulting to the Japanese baseball league to call this guy a rookie. Like,
Yeah, I mean, it became a thing when like Ichiro came over and like Hideki Matsui, that like, these guys that are studs and they're, developed professional athletes. It's a little weird, but it's a rookie to Major League Baseball. I hope they
yeah.
don't take too much of a take that as too much of a slight, but I get why
Yeah.
they're on there, but I get why you wouldn't think they should be.
Yeah, like
Um,
Ichiro has like thousands of hits, and he comes over Rookie of the Year. It's like,
yeah,
it's like kind of discounting what happens in Japan, which, as we know, very much good competition over there. But yeah, Senga had a
yeah.
really good year too, and I think he's going to settle in. To be honest, I know that he'll settle in. We're gonna see a Kodai Senga be really good at the big league level for years to come. But I think we agree on Carroll.
Yeah, I think so. But on the other side, I think the AL Rookie of the Year might be one of the more interesting ones. I don't think there's necessarily a runaway. It was Gunnar Henderson from the Orioles, Tristan Casas from the Red Sox, and Tanner Bibby of the Guardians. What are you thinking here?
Oh, I think it's probably going to be and Casas finished really good. I remember when he came to San Francisco in the later part of the year. Like he was red hot at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, he didn't play like two games in the series, so I don't know what happened. But all the Red Sox people were talking about how he was on fire and he was like one of the best players in the game, and I picked him up in fantasy. And I think it's got to be Gunnar Henderson. I think the contributions he provided at multiple positions at shortstop and third base. He led rookies in a lot of offensive categories. I think it's just got to be him.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he had kind of the expectations because he was the number one prospect in baseball for a while. And so to kind of show up and deliver on those, I think having that pressure and still deliver kind of gives him an extra little push as well. He struggled quite a bit at the beginning of the year, but then he kind of settled in and became a cog in the lineup for a team that won 100 games. So
Yeah, and
that's what
he's if we're like he's definitely better in terms of better than Casas. I can't say the name. What is it? Casas.
potato.
Yeah, Casas. I'll say Casas. Like edges him in pretty much every offensive category. But I didn't realize that is it BB? Bibby?
BB, Bibby,
Bibby.
potato, man. We
Yeah.
need some names here, but
I didn't realize that Bibby had a sub 3 ERA and over 140 innings, which is news to
yeah,
me. But shout out to him. But yeah, I think it's Gunnar Henderson's to lose. So
agreed.
yeah, so that's rookie of the year. And then the day 2 is going to be manager of the year. This one is just a head scratcher. It's kind of in a way, it's like a crapshoot in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's
Because
so hard to
because one thing to remember is all the voting for all of these awards is regular season only.
finish.
They
Yep.
vote at the end of the regular season. They don't know how the playoffs went.
Yep. I do not know how the playoffs went. The writers have until game 162, I believe October 1st, to turn in their ballots. A lot of them do it weeks in advance. A lot of them, wait till the last minute. It used to be mail. I think it might be digital now. That would make the most sense for instant. I don't know if they mail something on October 1st and it gets there in time. So I think
Mm-hmm.
it might be digital. I'm not sure. I'll have to ask someone about that. That's a part of that. But yeah, for the NL, and again, very difficult award to assess because we don't know. We will never know how much a manager's worth. We'll never know. But we might have a good indication. Craig Counsell with the Brewers, who is a free agent, or no, Cubs. I'm all over the place
Was a
here.
free agent.
Was a free agent, but left. Skip Schumacher, who did a good job with the Marlins. And the Marlins had a 15 win increase from 2022. And then Brian Snicker with the Braves. And I think I'm going to go with Schumacher because I like the idea of giving this award to kind of the underdog every year.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially with managers, it's a lot of more of like who improved their team the best. I think it might be hard to beat out Snickard, but he was managing like a modern day murderer's row. I don't think anyone expected the Marlins to make the postseason or be in the hunt even.
Snicker wrote the same names every day.
Yeah, how hard is that?
Yeah. Difficult, but again, like there's an element to like how much you do your job and how much you let the players do their job. And I think Schumacher had a really good influence on this team and Counsell,
although wouldn't it be awesome if Counsell won and then like the Cubs' first trip to Milwaukee, they have to like give him the award on the field in Milwaukee and the reception he would get in a Cubs uniform? That would be
God.
good theater.
He's gonna get booed. Did you see? So before I came on here, I was on Instagram and I saw a picture in Milwaukee. There's a Craig Counsell family field or something. It's like a little league diamond, and it got vandalized. And they wrote across Craig Counsell family field, they wrote "ass."
Oh, jeez,
in graffiti. So
that's too bad.
He's gonna get booed.
Yeah, he's gonna get booed for sure. But yeah, I think Schumacher should get it. Like you said, manager of the year is always kind of a crapshoot.
Yeah, no doubt. And then American League, Bruce Bochy with Texas coming out of retirement. Kevin Cash with Tampa Bay always seems to be in the running for this. I think he's got 2 already. And then Brandon Hyde with Baltimore. And Brandon Hyde led the Orioles to 101 wins. So that's the most for the Orioles in a very long time, since 1979. And also MLB is noting that he had the most come from behind victories, or nobody had more come from behind victories than Brandon Hyde's Orioles. So this one's pretty loaded, I think. Maybe because there's better teams involved, but
yeah, I think Cash is out just because he's been there so often, and people kind of expected the Rays to be there. Like we said, they don't know that Bochy ended up leading them to a World Series, and they kind of just snuck into the postseason. Whereas the Orioles went through a loaded division, won 101 games, not totally unexpected since they had a pretty solid year last year too. I think it's definitely between Hyde and Bochy, at least in my book. But since it's regular season only, I could see Hyde taking this one home.
Yeah, I think it would be Hyde too. And Cash is gonna have like the perennial favorite, like because it's the Rays and they do things differently and it's a lot of mixing and matching. It's kind of like what the Giants have done the last few years, but like on steroids with much
Yeah.
more certainty. Um, and Bochy, of course, had the big offense and also kind of had to mix and match with like the pitching and the bullpen throughout the year, and the few injuries that he had. But I think it's Hyde as well. I agree. And it's hard to believe that Bochy's only won one Manager of the Year award.
Yeah, never won it in San Francisco.
Never won it in San Francisco. Only won it in '96 with the Padres. So, um, pretty
Yeah.
insane note there. Um, and then Cy Young Award is an interesting one too. We'll go to the National League first, with Cy Young, and Zach Gallen from Arizona is a finalist. Blake Snell from San Diego is a finalist. And Logan Webb, for those listening in the Bay Area, is a finalist for the San Francisco Giants. So,
Yeah.
um,
One thing that surprised me here was no Spencer Strider because he
yeah,
struck out so many guys. And the other thing that surprised me was 3 West Coast guys. I mean, usually the East Coast riders are in bed by the time these guys are taking the mound. And so it's kind of cool as a West Coast fan to see 3 guys from the NL West as the only nominees here.
that's really
Um,
cool. Yeah. And Justin Steele, obviously a good year in Chicago. He was someone also I thought maybe he's going to be top 5. I think Strider's going to be top 5 too.
mhm.
Um, but it's interesting because like all these guys have their kind of unique cases in different ways. Like Snell has, he's got the 180 innings and he's the favorite, and he's got like the just unhittability. And then Gallen kind of has like the strikeout numbers and the durability, and then Webb has the innings and the workload. So it's like it's kind of like, choose from the buffet of what you want of the variety.
Yeah, I agree. All very kind of different cases. As much as I hope Logan Webb would win it, I think it's got to be Blake Snell. I think
Yeah,
Webb's going to be third in that trio. I think it's going to go Snell, Gallen, Webb. I think Snell's biggest issue is himself with his walks. Other than that, it's really hard for guys to get knocks off of him when he's on. It's kind of funny. His career, he's had like 2 really great seasons. When he won the Cy Young previously for the Rays, and I think 18 was it, and then this year. But when he's on, he's shown that he is almost impossible to hit. And so, despite him not breaking 200 innings, 2.25 ERA over 180 is pretty solid. I think a lot of people outside of the Bay Area will be surprised to see Webb on the list. But if you watched him pitch this year, despite his 11-13 record, he's the new Matt Cain, I guess. But whip of just over 1, led all of baseball in innings pitched, and for a team that needed starting pitching to carry as many innings as they could when the bullpen games were a big thing. I think that's more to his case, but I think more people will look at the statistics instead of what they meant to their team. And so I think Blake Snell will take this one.
yeah, just unhittability. I mean, nobody hit him at all. He had 12 scoreless innings or 12 scoreless starts, which is insane. And MLB again says that it's tied for the most by a qualified starting pitcher in the divisional era since 1969 when they lowered the mounds. Blake Snell, and he's going to have a new team. Maybe we could get to it in a bit, but we'll see what kind of gamble a team takes on him just because of the inconsistencies that you mentioned with the good year, maybe, and then a bad year, then a mediocre year, then another good year. It's kind of a gamble that you're going to take with Blake Snell in free agency. But you're going to get strikeouts and walks, that for sure. And whether he gets lit up, I guess that's the question, but I would go with him too. And I think you probably have a situation where it's Snell, Gallen, Webb, some combination of that, but we'll have to see. And then for the American League, this is another interesting field. Garrett Cole, who does not have a Cy Young, which is surprising.
Yeah, that's very surprising.
Very surprising. He's always in the race. He's always finished second twice. So he's up there. He led the American League in ERA and innings and opponent's batting average, and WHIP. So he's got a good Cy Young case. Kevin Gausman with Toronto, a good year for them. A sub 3.2 ERA, led all starters in F WAR, And then Sonny Gray with the Twins, who kind of came out of nowhere and was healthy this season and was a big part in the Twins making the postseason. And he's also a free agent. So we're going to see where he signs too. And again, another guy with question marks because he's been hurt in the past and he's been ineffective in the past. But I think it might be Garrett Cole's time to shine. And it's funny because you don't really hear much about Garrett Cole these days. He just kind of silently does his thing.
Yeah, it's just kind of expected. It's almost like, okay, yeah, Cole's dominant. He's a finalist, but then there's always just that one guy who outshines them a little bit and they get the award. So I think this is his year to finally bring it home. Uh, you know, Gossman and Gray both had solid seasons, but I just don't see them outrunning Cole in this situation. So as much as I'd love to see like a Kevin Gossman win, I think it's Cole's turn to finally get the hardware.
Yeah, no doubt. And Sonny Gray was giving up 7 earned runs in his final 7 starts. So he was allowing a run a start in his final 7, which is impressive. And we saw what he did during the postseason. We'll see what happens with him with contract wise, but I agree. I think it's going to go to Cole, who had a really good season. And I think he's eventually going to end up on one of those like Yankees top pitchers lists of all time in their franchise's history. I think he's got the single season all time strikeout record, if I'm not mistaken. But he's going to be up there. And the Yankees, we always think about offense. We don't really think much about pitching. They have good pitching in their system with, help me here, Whitey Ford, Ron Guidry,
Roger Clemens, Andy
Pettit. You know, there's some good pitchers, but I think Cole's going to be up there with them. So
yeah, and especially New Yankee Stadium, it's kind of historically since it's been built a hitter's yard, and so for him to kind of be able to always put up a strong season in New Yankee Stadium is pretty impressive as well.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, here's the big bopper, MVP. Mookie Betts from the Dodgers, of course, a perennial contender for this award, and he has a shot to win one in both leagues. Freddie Freeman, his teammate with the Dodgers, had an amazing year. There's a stat that I'm going to get to with Freeman that blows my mind in just a second with the Dodgers. And then I'm missing one, Ronald Acuna Jr., who had a 40-50 season.
40-70.
40-70 season, sorry. But 40-50, first ever to do that. And then he just kind of kept on piling on and got to 70 steals, which is amazing. And then he led everybody in pretty much everything. Player of the month 3 times. I mean, he's my winner. I'm sorry. Like he's the guy for me.
Yeah, I mean, higher average, higher home runs, higher on base percentage, higher slugging, stolen bases. I mean, but all 3 of these guys, I mean, obviously Betts and Freeman in the same lineup, and then we talked about, Snitker just riding in the same lineup of studs every game. So it's not like any of these guys had to carry their team. So I think at that point, it's like most impressive season. And I don't see how you don't give it to a guy that was 40-40, 40-50, 40-60, 40-70, which none of us have ever seen. But yeah, what was that Freeman stat that you wanted to throw at us?
59 doubles.
Oh, yeah, I think he was one. Yeah, I knew he was trying to get to 60. It would have been the first time in a long time, I believe, we would have seen 60 doubles, right?
59. That's insane. That's insane to get like I saw that at the end of the year in the postseason when they were talking about Freddie Freeman and the broadcast. Like the first game of the series is the best in terms of broadcast because they always tell the stories about like how the season went and they introduce the players to the audience. And when I heard that, I was like 50, it was 59 doubles. 59 doubles. Like just I can't even grasp that. That's insane.
Yeah.
And 90 extra base hits. That's just crazy. And he's I don't think he's won 20. He won the one in 2020. And the thing about Betts is that like he had kind of like your normal Mookie Betts year, but he just had the power to go with it. Like this year, he really broke out power wise at 39 homers. And I just always think about when the home run derby came up and everybody's like, why is he competing? And I remember our pal, and I'm gonna throw him under the bus here, Taylor Worth, was like, why is Mookie? I don't want to see Mookie Betts in the home run derby. I want to see a real home run hitter. And Mookie Betts ended up with 39 home runs. And granted, is he built for the competition? No. So I get Taylor's point, but still a cool thing to see him hit 39 homers.
Yeah, and for the analytics people, we've talked a lot of just counting stats and averages and whatnot, but Betts did lead the league in WAR for those. So it's not like Acuna was, it's him and two scrubs. Obviously, Freeman and Betts are just, like you said, each of them have an MVP already. They're doing what everyone expects them to do, and I wish Mookie. He's one of those guys as a Giants fan. I wish was on another team so I could root for him a little bit more. But just a solid dude, a 300 bowler a couple times, I think. But yeah. I know he was chasing 40 and he finished just short. I know he wanted to, and he kind of had a little power outage at the very end and just finished just shy. But 39 home runs is pretty solid for a guy that does everything else. And also, I mean, he played a lot of positions too. For those who play fantasy baseball, I think he's going to qualify at second base next year because he played so much, and shortstop. I mean, I don't think it's easy to look at guys, especially nowadays, playing all these positions. It's really tough to do at the big league level. So, I think the kind of Swiss Army knife ability of Mookie Betts shouldn't go overlooked as well. But I'm giving it to Acuna.
Me too. And if that happens with Betts, can you think of a better fantasy baseball player in history? Like
only Shohei Ohtani.
Damn it! Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. That thought lasted a good 5 seconds.
But I mean, you're right. I mean, that production where you can plug him in anywhere almost, and shortstop and second base can be two of the hardest positions to fill.
Yes, especially second base. I always go in the drafts not finding a second baseman right away, but. And like fantasy baseball has been around 30 years probably, and the last 15 were significant. The last 20 were probably significant because I know people that have fantasy teams going way back. You probably one of them.
But yeah, I mean, you can get outfield MVP caliber numbers from a second baseman. That's
crazy.
Yeah,
you can move them around. Yeah, that's one of the best fantasy players of all time, right up there with Shohei.
Which takes us to the American League MVP. Who will finish second and third to Shohei Ohtani, Steven?
Shohei's winning it without a doubt. Any time when he's doing both at a decent level, he's gonna be the front runner. But interesting that Seager and Semien are there, especially not knowing the postseason stuff that they're there, and they're finalists. It would be cool, like if they announced the finalists before the postseason too. Just because you would have that line going in, like MVP finalists, but really cool to see them there too, because we thought at first when the Rangers made that investment that it could be troubled, but it's Ohtani's to win. I think
Seager, even though he missed like the last month of the season, I mean, he's just the slam dunk candidate.
Yeah.
And kind of similar to Bet. We didn't really talk about it with Betts and Freeman, but with, anytime you have teammates, especially as finalists, they tend to split the vote a bit, where even if it was a closer race between them and the one that's not the teammate, they're going to split some votes where, like, some people are going to say Semien over Seager over Semien, whereas the people who are Ohtani strong are just going to go Ohtani strong or Acuna strong. So, but I mean, when you have two MVP finalists, it's not a surprise that they go deep in the playoffs, which obviously came after the voting. But yeah, I mean, we did talk about Seager and Semien a little bit in the World Series talk. So yeah, I mean, you're talking about a guy who, if he had stayed healthy, probably would have been in the Cy Young conversation too. And he just went off at the plate. And we'll talk to him about him again in just a moment when we get into a little discussion on free agency. So the Shohei Ohtani Award.
Yeah, Shohei Ohtani Award. And let's get into the that discussion on free agency. I figured that we could just kind of glance over these names real quick. You
think like top 5 maybe?
Top 5, yeah. I think we have time for top 5. And obviously, again, Shohei Ohtani's the big one. And we've kind of talked about this before. We had Jared Timms on very early on in this podcast, and we talked about Ohtani. And he's, of course, the number 1 ranked free agent. Not just what he does on the field. There's now question marks added into this equation with the UCL, and kind of what his future might be with the two-way stuff. Maybe it lowers his value. I think it certainly does. Maybe teams are hesitant to pay him, but he is still nonetheless going to get paid, and rightfully so. But what do you think is on the table for Shohei? Because I don't know if he holds up the market or not, because he might.
Yeah, it's tough because he's not going to hold up just one market. He'll hold up 2 markets. He'll hold up the pitching market potentially and the hitting market. But I think it will bring his value down a little bit, but I don't think too much, because all it takes is two teams to be interested at whatever it would have been before to have a bidding war to get him up there. I think it's going to be over 500 million, at least a decade, long contract. From what we're hearing, it sounds like it's between the Dodgers, Giants, and Rangers. The Rangers kind of sneaking in there. I've just felt it for a while. I think he's going to be in Dodger blue and just move up the freeway a little bit to Chavez Ravine. I think he's probably going to. At least during negotiations, he's going to say, I'm going to pitch again. Maybe he takes 2024 off from the mound and just hits for a year, but he's going to obviously tell everyone he's going to pitch again to get that value up. And so I think a team, whoever signs him, is at least going to give him that shot once they deem him healthy enough, because he's too electric on the mound to not. But yeah, I mean, I hope he doesn't hold up the market. I think that's my number one gripe with MLB free agency, is it just takes so long to develop. I mean, it's been open for a few days now and nothing's really happened. So hopefully he doesn't hold it up too much, but he quite well could. What are you seeing here with Ohtani?
Yeah, and I don't think he's going to hold up the market either. I think he's not going to play the games that like a lot of other free agents have historically. I think he wants to get settled with someone, and get on with his rehab program.
And one thing, sorry to kind of cut off there, but he said that he wants to win, and to hold up the market is only a detriment to that, because you want other players to want to sign wherever you sign, because they want to play with you and they think that that'll help their chance to win. So I do think he'll look to sign a little earlier than other top free agents.
Yeah, of course. And I do want to shout out, if you're a Giant fan, then us at Giants Chatter, which Tyler and I are both admins of, we released our top free agents and where they're going to go, or destinations. And Tyler had them going, not to spill the whole list, but Tyler had them going to the Dodger, Ohtani going to LA. And I had him going to Texas. And I think Texas is going to open their checkbooks for Ohtani. They get money randomly from somewhere. They're all of a sudden a huge market with a big payroll. I see him going to Texas and fulfilling a need there.
I did have him going to Texas originally, because I want him, if he's not going to go to the Giants, I don't want it to be the Dodgers. So I had it as the Rangers originally, and I was just like, but I just don't see how he doesn't go to LA.
Yeah, it seems like they've kind of been aligning for this when they didn't spend last offseason. So, yeah. But MLB trade rumors, all their experts, all three of them, have Dodgers written all over Shohei Ohtani, which is interesting. But this is one of the most, this is the biggest free agent maybe in professional sports. I
wish he never got hurt. It would have been probably it probably still might be the biggest one ever, as far as just like, where's he going to go? Anticipation. But
yeah, it's up there. Anyways, Bellinger's an interesting case. So I actually have to write about Bellinger for an article pretty soon, but I have my worries with Bellinger. I don't think he's going to get a massive 10-year deal worth 200 something million, 250 million, whatever it may be. Because it was not too long ago that, he had a 2-year stretch where he was one of the worst. It was one of the worst 2-year stretches offensively.
Wasn't he non-tendered by the Dodgers?
Yes. And we're judging him based on 1 year. I get that he might be the number 2 guy, but I don't know. I see him going to the Yankees though.
Yeah, I think I had him going to the Yankees too. The interesting thing with Bellinger is some of the, everyone's putting out their predictions, and just the range of where the length of the deal that they're saying he's going to get. Some places they're saying 5 or 6 years. MLB trade rumors is saying 12 years because of his age. So it's just nuts to me, the range of expectations of what he could potentially get.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And we talked about Blake Snell. So we'll talk about someone else. And I'm gonna screw up the name. Yoshinobu Yamamoto. I think I nailed it. From Japan, who's got a chance, and Kerry Crowley said this on his podcast, has a chance to be one of the best Japanese pitchers to come out of Japan. And he's 25 years old. He's the ace. He's going to get a 10-year deal, 9-year deal, 8-year deal, whatever it may be. He's going to get paid, and he's the best starting pitcher on this market. And the Giants have scouted him heavily. That's who I think is going to get him. I think if they get a top-line guy and then they get Alex Cobb back midseason, and they kind of roll with the pitching first mentality, and they, whatever offense gives them, they give them. I think that's not a bad bet.
Yeah, one thing, it's kind of interesting because usually when Japanese players have come over, they don't get super large deals just because they want to. MLB teams, I think, want to see them prove themselves. Ichiro got kind of a big deal, Shohei to an extent, but not 9 years, 200 million or what they're talking about for Yamamoto. His performances in Japan have just been ridiculous, though. I have him going to the Yankees. Just for those listening, I have Snell going to the Giants. We to kind of, Steven said he sees them getting a big arm. I do too. I see him as getting Snell, but I think Yamamoto is going to New York. He's alluded to in articles that he wants a big market. There's no bigger market than New York City. And there's no, at least internationally, there's not really a bigger team than the Yankees. So if the Yankees give him a competitive offer, I think that's where he'll go.
Yeah, I think that's not a bad call either. And or the Mets. I mean, I don't know if he would I don't know if he'd want to be in a market where there's two Japanese players. I know Otani kind of had that request too. Um, where he wanted to be the only Japanese player. I don't know exactly how that works. It's kind of intriguing. I'd want to look more into it. Um, but yeah, and I think we could save some more for later because we're gonna be here all off season talking, and there's a bunch of free agents that we could get into, but we'll keep it at that. Let's get into 3 ups, 3 downs. So I was the negative Nancy last week, and Tyler's gonna be the one that's gonna be the negative Nancy this week. So do you want to start with your downs?
Yeah, we'll start with the 3 downs here. I'm gonna kind of just to tie it into where we left off. The free agency market is number one down for me, just because it's not a very strong market. We've talked about it a little bit in past episodes. I mean, we just talked about the top 3 guys, and the number 2 guy was a guy that was DFA'd a year ago. So just to kind of show the strength of the market there. So we just talked about free agency a bit, so I'll keep that one a little short and sweet. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a rough class. It's a rough class. You could have a question mark around everybody, I think, pretty much. So I wonder how it's going to impact trades, which we'll get into probably this offseason too.
Yeah, for sure. Next down, it's a little tough this time of year. I'm not going to go with something easy like the Diamondbacks because they were in the World Series. So I'm going to go big market baseball because some of those bigger market teams, either, didn't make the playoffs or had a very short run in the playoffs. And we ended up with a Texas Arizona World Series, which aren't very large markets. And so I think that's why you see some teams like the Yankees being predicted to spend a lot of money in free agency and the Dodgers to go after Otani and stuff like that. So I think this year kind of put big market baseball on notice, and I think they're a little bit down right now. I think they're showing that everyone kind of has a shot in Major League Baseball right now.
Yeah, and I hope it inspires some of these these teams kind of on the fringe to spend money, like the Reds. Like I hope it inspires the Reds, and I hope it inspires Chicago and some of these other teams that are like at the forefront of postseason that are smaller markets with not a huge payroll to, hey, you have a chance. You have a chance. Look at what these teams did and still have that level of player development combined with, external, acquisitions.
Yeah, I think the Reds are a good call there because they have so much good young core talent that's going to be cheap for a number of
Yeah.
years for them.
Compliment them. Compliment them.
Yeah, go sign a guy or two that can get you over the top and get you in the postseason. And a lot of teams recently have shown you just need a ticket to the dance, and then anything can happen. So, and then last down, I'm going to go MLB GM meetings. They got cut short for I think the first time ever, really, because of a stomach bug just came through, and I think I heard over 30 executives became quite ill, and so they have canceled the rest of the GM meetings, which it'll be interesting to see how that kind of maybe slows things down. Maybe that's kind of makes the process even a little slower this offseason, but that's got to be a down. Got to cancel the GM meetings because everyone has an ouchy tummy, as our friend Angelina would say.
Yeah, I don't remember if it was on my timeline or in a chat, but somebody's like, "Yeah, who didn't wash their hands after taking a dump?" somebody spread that, but that's wild. I think I saw an estimated 10% of people had it. That like
Wow.
knocks out a lot. Like if you're a team and like your GM or executive has a stomach bug, like I'm sure you want the meetings to be ended. So good for baseball for taking that initiative. Maybe it's some virus that we don't know about. Cross our fingers that everybody's okay. But it's kind of comical in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah. At
So
least everyone's used to communicating via Zoom now, thanks to the good old pandemic. So, they'll
yeah,
have to meet virtually for a while everyone heals up, I guess.
yeah, meeting with Brian Cashman, who's got half of his head hovered over the toilet puking, and then he's half on Zoom. So, um, anyways, let's talk about the three ups as we like to. We used to end this on the downs, and it used to be very depressing because we used to go like, "Oh, this guy had Tommy John." Well, we
Thanks for
thanks
listening.
for listening. So we could hop into the ups. I do want to shout out Craig Counsell for being a trailblazer, for getting a really nice contract managerial wise. I mean, he kind of set the bar, and why don't I have the exact number in front of me? I believe it was 5 years,
5 years, 40 million.
40 million. Which is, again, if you do simple math, 8 million a year, which is the highest AAV for a manager. I think Bochy's at 4 or 5, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And
Other managers are thanking Craig Counsell right now for sure.
yes, it's, and I hope we never see somebody be signed to manage a team that's going to make 750K. It's not a 6-month job. It's a 24-hour, 365 job, and these guys need to get compensated. And maybe if they get compensated, more prominent people will do it, right? $8 million compared to 750. I know a lot of the people that are you could argue that, oh, well, they already have money, but the incentive is bigger. The
Yeah.
incentive is much bigger. I mean, it's such an underpaid position in sports. It's one of the most underpaid positions in sports in my mind.
Yeah. I
Look
mean,
at the
just to,
NFL. I mean, it's
yeah.
like Joe Buck is making more than MLB managers, and Troy
Yeah.
Aikman. So
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about it before with just to kind of have a little Giants tie in, like, oh, maybe Buster should manage the Giants. Oh, why would he want to? He made like $100 million while he played. And, hey, but if you're saying, hey, Buster, we're going to give you 8 million instead of, 2.5, makes it more worth your consideration. And like you said, you might end up with some more prominent guys getting back in the dugout.
yeah, and I don't
I
think
did
it's
see one interesting graphic was that when Craig Counsell signed for 5 years, 40 million, Ozzie Albies, who's like one of the best second basemen, his extension was like 7 years, 42 million. So he's out earning Albies.
That's good. I did see that too. Um, and it's just a testament to what the Braves are able to do. My number two up is back to Shohei Ohtani. He is donating 60,000 baseball gloves to Japanese elementary schools. He throughout Japan, and he said, quote, "I'm happy to announce that I will be donating approximately 60,000 youth gloves to every elementary school in Japan." Every elementary school in Japan. That's a country. And then he
Yeah,
said that comes to be around 20,000 elementary schools. 20,000 elementary schools. So I'm going to pull out my calculator very quickly.
that's 3 gloves a school
Three gloves is so
on average.
60 times oh wait, 60,000 times 20,000.
That's not how it works, man.
No, that's not how it works. I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to clip that off.
No, leave it. It's great. No, but I mean, either way, I mean, that's pretty awesome. I saw a really cool quote from him saying, like, I look forward to someday sharing a major league field with someone who's going to use one of these gloves. He's wants to grow the popularity of baseball in Japan and get some more, obviously we're talking elementary school here, so they won't be in the big leagues for a little while, but he wants to get that MLB pipeline to Japan a little more fluid and get some more kids there playing ball. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and for those that are watching, they just saw, but the answer that I got when I put that in my calculator was 1.2 E9.
Yeah,
So,
he's donating like 1.2 billion gloves.
yeah, that are bound to produce errors in right field apparently.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, that's really cool. It's awesome when you see like guys that are, willing to do that for communities. And like you said, it's not like they're like, if he signs with like the Dodgers or the Giants or the Rangers, every school in Dallas, no, a whole country is
whole country. Yeah,
getting some gloves.
it's not a state, it's a country. And shout out to New Balance, who are, that's Otani's sponsor, and it's a perfect fit for him, I think. And they're being accommodating and probably having to make more gloves now than they ever have for one specific thing. And then finally, just to end it, the Phillies were very upfront with Rhys Hoskins by telling him that they're not going to bring him back because Bryce Harper will be moving to first base full time. So this is a new develop. Like we saw him play first base in the postseason. It was kind of leaning towards that way after the injury. The arm just wasn't going to play in right field anymore, but cool to see him at first base, to be honest. And I think it's good. And the reason I'm putting this as an up is to A, find, something that was good enough for my third up, and B, compliment the Phillies for making up their mind in this way and being cool and upfront about it with Rhys Hoskins and making up their mind, because a lot of teams are very indecisive about this, and they're just, you know what, Harper's our first baseman, let's go with it, and he seems to be down with it, and I wouldn't put it past him that he's going to be a very good first baseman.
Yeah, and I think another reason to consider it as an up is I think that's definitely going to elongate his career. It's going to keep him healthier longer, and he's, whether you like him or not, he's a face of baseball. He's one of the more entertaining players, one of the more talented players. And so to keep him healthy as long as possible and entertaining baseball fans all over the world is good for the game, not just the Phillies. So I think that's even another wrinkle of why it should be an up.
No doubt about it. And this is the season, not just of free agents and trades, but also of position changes, which fascinates me. Because guys, Brandon Crawford, we almost saw it, but yeah. Well, Tyler, I think we shut it down again.
We did it.
We got through episode number 35 without any issues, besides me not being able to do math.
And forgetting that Shohei Ohtani is a good fantasy baseball option.
And forgetting that Shohei is a good fantasy baseball option. It's not an episode without a gaffe. So
1.2 errors in right field.
1.2 E9. So that's the amount of people, the amount of children in Japan that are going to be getting a glove from Shohei Ohtani. So apparently. Anyways, thank you everybody for listening. And more throughout the off season. It's going to be fun. We're excited to break everything down. Maybe have a few guests. 'Tis the season of guests. More people are available. We're going to hop on that too. Thank you everybody for listening, and have a good day.
Yeah. Really quick.
Yes.
In case we don't record before Thanksgiving, happy holidays to everybody. Happy Thanksgiving. Thankful for a lot of things in my life. Thankful for you, my friend Steven, and for anyone who listens. Hope you guys have a wonderful holiday with your friends and family. And that's what's up.
Yes, happy holidays. I echo that. Thankful for you, Tyler, and